Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. This is the real Nathan Daley, and I am your law enforcement translator, your 13-year law enforcement veteran, here to provide insight on a lot of current event issues, especially those involving law enforcement. You guys, listen, you see the thumbnail, you see the title, you know what time it is. I am interviewing Brandon Tatum. Listen, you guys, this interview is a great interview. I'm not gonna lie. We talked about a lot of information. We covered a lot of things. You guys, this interview was one for the ages. So let me give you, before we get into all that, let me just say this. First of all, welcome to the channel for those who are new. Shout out to my new subscribers. You guys, if you're not subscribed to the channel, you want to be part of this journey, please subscribe. Listen, also, if you want to be part of this journey and you see value in this content, please join the channel. I would love to have you as a member of this channel. I'm always looking for new investigators to carry on this journey. And you guys, listen, a little bit of admin work. Listen, every Wednesday at 8 p.m., you guys, Eastern Standard Time, we are live streaming on this channel. That is our dedicated time for live streaming. You guys know we talk about a lot of complex, unique, sensitive topics, you guys. Listen, we don't censor over here. I'm all about the First Amendment, you guys. Listen, we want to have healthy dialogue, healthy conversations. Nothing is off the table. Listen, anybody wants to come up and debate, discuss, and have a healthy dialogue, I'm always for it. You just know my rules. You got to cam up, right? So if you want to stand up, cam up. Put your words where your face is, you guys. Listen, every Wednesday, we are here 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Would love to have you a part of the channel. Please, please, please be a part of the movement. What else, you guys? Listen, before we get into all of that, I am officially going to release this interview. Listen, the interview was amazing. A lot of people have a lot to say about Brandon Tatum, you guys. Listen, the whole concept of this stream is based on the idea of two sides of the same coin. Me and Brandon Tatum represent that very thing, you guys. Listen, we may agree on a lot of things, but there are some unique things about us that are different. But that's what makes this conversation worthwhile, you guys. I want to know if you're able to catch those things. Sometimes they're small, sometimes they're large, but the idea is that we are having a high-level surgical conversation about a multitude of things. Listen, the interview was 2 hours. It went on, and we had a great conversation, you guys. We covered a lot of things. We covered multiple high-profile cases. I asked Brandon some tough questions about his perspective on law enforcement and how people receive him, not just nationwide, but also within the Black community, guys. We touched on it all. And surprisingly, you guys, we had some great conversation. You saw the trailer. Listen, it's a lot of content. I'm going to release the first 2 videos. It's a 4-part series, 2 sides of the same coin. I'm releasing the first 2 videos on the channel, and then the entire video, you guys, will be released exclusively in the member section. So please sign up and become a member so you can get the member perks and the member benefits, you guys. A lot of great things in the content area for our members. So just be mindful of that. First 2 will be released to you, and then the other 2 in the entire stream will be released in the member section. Now, with that being said, you guys, get your questions ready. You're in for a treat. Great conversation. Can't say I didn't warn you. Listen, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Stand by at the end of this. We will be showing a preview to part 2. I'm looking forward to your thoughts, you guys. And without further ado, let's get into this. Brandon Tatum, thank you so much for joining us today on this wonderful morning. There's a lot to talk about, brother. Listen, this is about you today. So tell the people who you are, where they can find you, and your mission and what you do on your channel.
Yeah, so again, thank you for having me on, brother. I really appreciate your channel, man. You do a lot of great work.
Thank you.
Solid, intelligent individual, and I think you add so much value. That's one of the reasons why I'm here.
Thank you.
I was a police officer in Tucson, Arizona for about 6.5 years. While I was a police officer, I did a whole bunch of things on the department. I was a field training officer. I was a spokesperson for the police department for about a year. I was a general instructor. I taught at the academy. I also was on a tactical SWAT team.
All right.
And I did a whole bunch of other stuff. Right before I left, due to this political climate, And it wasn't anything bad on the police department. It was just that an opportunity presented itself, and I ended up taking it, and I never went back to policing.
Right.
But before that, I wanted to go all the way up to becoming a chief. I went back to get my master's degree because you have to have a master's degree to be the chief. And I love policing. Every minute of policing was a great experience. Some more exciting than others, but it was a great experience. Taught me a lot. I wouldn't be the man I am today if I had not become a police officer and taken that step. I think it's a very honorable profession. I think most people do what's right. And I think individuals like you and I want to see the profession continue to thrive, and we want to hold those accountable that should not be in the profession, so we can have, a good quality, likable, community-oriented profession that can go on and have a continued great legacy. And I have a YouTube channel, The Officer Tatum on YouTube. I have a syndicated radio show. It's The Officer Tatum Show. So anything you want to find from me, you put in The Officer Tatum, and you will find anything you want to find.
Facts. Listen, you guys, Tatum, Brandon's a heavy hitter in this space. He's a major voice in and out of YouTube. He has a strong political voice as well. I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm completely honored to be able to have you here and have this discussion. When I first got on YouTube, of course, people were like, hey, did you hear about Brandon? Did you hear about Brandon Tatum? He talked about this. Can you look at it? I've had an opportunity to see a lot of your videos, and a lot of people will be surprised. We're going to agree on a lot of things. We are prior law enforcement, but not only that, we're both brothers in Christ as well. I think that's a big thing as well. A lot of people don't understand that concept sometimes and what that means in the profession, and that all police officers are not created equal. We are individuals. And so we do have different perspectives on certain things, and at the same time, there's a lot of things we do share similarities on. The title of this concept that I put together for us is called Two Sides of the Same Coin. And I think that's going to ring true. And so I want to ask you a question, because what's the future of policing? We've gone through a lot in this profession, and it's been a lot. We've all witnessed it. What are your thoughts? What is the future of policing, and can we change? Can we make a change, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a very difficult question to answer. I wish that I had the magic ball and I can tell the future. But history repeats itself.
Right.
Things in life ebb and flows. You have your ups, you have your downs. The economy is the same way. Presidents are the same way. Life is the same way. Even in experiences in life, you have some downs and you have some ups. Inevitably, I think that policing in America is always going to be here. And I think policing in America will improve, and community relationships will improve at some point. Now, I do think that we are in a downturn, and a lot of it has to do with media. A lot of it has to do with misconception, misperception, social media, and just the hatred and misunderstanding of what law enforcement officers actually have to do. I mean, I would argue, and this happened to me before I became a cop, and then when I became a cop, I realized I had no idea what cops actually did. It's a perception of what you think they do, what they should do, what training they have, what training they don't have. And if we could build an educational platform where people understood police officers better, I think we will begin to see the trend of a upward trajectory, because the citizenry needs law enforcement.
Yes.
And I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what kind of programs you try to put in place. You do need men and women that are willing to go out and run towards the issues when everybody else is running away, and speak to people where they at, meet people on a day-to-day basis in them having the worst day of their lives, and be able to hold criminals accountable, bring justice to victims to the best of their abilities. That is going to be a part of our constitutional republic forever. And I do think that we're in a downturn, but I do believe that at some point this is going to turn around.
No, absolutely. I think it's funny you bring that up, because that's what motivated me to do my channel. I call myself the law enforcement translator. When I was sitting down putting this YouTube thing together, I actually sat down and tried to figure out, how do I want to present this? Because I know it's a very sensitive topic. I've done this job. You've done this job. There's a lot of misunderstandings, and we have a lot of divisive people in this profession, outside of the profession, politically. We have activists that aren't genuine, that are finessing people. lying to people, abusing data and statistics. And I tell people all the time, you're trying to tell me about the data that I myself had to do so that you can read from the comfort of your own home. You know, so as I come here and I try to explain to you and bring truth to a difficult situation, I get a lot of pushback sometimes. We've been conditioned to believe that this profession is wicked, that it's evil, and it's full of racist people. And granted, we got some bad people in it. No one will ever argue that. But you cannot dismiss the great people who are in it. I look at this as I gave myself an opportunity to say, listen, I want to come here and dispel a lot of myths that are pervasive in this profession, that go out through this country, that people repeat that's not true because of the media. And I look at myself as a mediator between the citizens and law enforcement. I feel like we are missing that. We're missing that on the national stage. No one comes up and cleans up the mess that the media leaves behind. And we need proper representation in this profession. And I want to put myself in a position to be able to speak on behalf of the citizens and then translate those things to law enforcement, and then also translate things to law enforcement back to the citizens, especially in the Black community. You know, our community has a very unique problem with law enforcement that goes all the way back. It's very historical. And so I understand that, and I know it requires a scalpel, not necessarily a hammer, to address. But since we're on the topic of media, what would you say is the most divisive thing that media does, from your experience, even from a political aspect?
Well, I think the media is, we have to understand the concept and how media is designed in the United States of America. The media isn't designed for you to get information anymore. The media is designed for you to click and watch so they can sell advertisement. So the best way for them to walk that, to live that out, is for them to be clickbaity and for them to show very short clips without context of police interactions that'll make people have a visceral experience. And those things are very exciting for people that consume the content, but it's damning to law enforcement.
Yeah.
You show a 20-second clip of a cop shooting a guy, and that's all you show. And people don't understand protocol. People don't understand the law. People don't understand the call text, what the officer heard on the radio, what they were responding to. All of these things need to be displayed in order for people to have a better, well-rounded perspective of incidents. And so when they don't do that, it hurt us tremendously.
Yes.
And another thing is that the media have the ability to go out and make predictions about things that police officers can't predict. Because when things are under investigation, police officers can't release body-worn cameras. They can't release certain investigatory information, because then they compromise the investigation as it is, pursued in court or anything like that. But the media don't have to do that.
Right.
They can make up whatever they want. They can use innuendo. They can do all kinds of things in order to make you click on it and watch. And it is very, very difficult for law enforcement officers to then combat the narratives that they put out.
That's true. Is there any way to fix that? Is there any reform, right? And we can dive into reform issues. Media is a propaganda arm, absolutely. And again, this country has become very divisive between red and blue, white and black, as we already know it. People always ask me, I say, we know, Brandon, we know you're a conservative, right? Yeah. That's another strike against you in the Black community. They like, this brother's a cop and he's a conservative. He's a traitor, right? That's the thing that goes around a lot. I'm well aware. I get called a sellout and a coon and an Uncle Tom all the time. They called me a coconut recently. So, but it is what it is. But reform, police reform. What are your thoughts on police reform? We know they put out the George Floyd Policing Act. I've had a chance to go through it extensively. I'm the type of person where, because I did the job, I don't know who they're getting these ideas from, first and foremost. It can't be people who are actually really doing the job. Has to be, well, I won't say that, but we don't know who they're getting this stuff from, right? But the reality is, when I look at these things, I'm like, this isn't going to fix the problem. There's so much stuff that there's real reform that's missing, and it begs to differ whether or not they really want to fix the problem. When it comes to police reform, what things off the top of your head, I know there's a lot, but just anything that comes to mind that you feel is important that's never addressed?
All right, I think that's a great question. You know, I don't like to call it police reform. I
Mm.
like to call it, I could say, police innovation or something of that nature.
Mm.
Because I think reform, uh, to me, it makes it appear that the current state that it's in needs to be completely reformed and changed. And I don't think so, because I think policing is done very well on a large scale.
Yeah.
However, there's no police officer that I know on planet Earth
Mm.
will tell you that police don't need more training. There
Fact.
is we are not trained enough for the things that we are expected to do. Now
Fact.
we do the best with what we got, with the little money they pay us, with the little training they provide us, and with the lack of exposure to deadly force situations, because we don't kill people every day.
This is fact.
And what happens is, when you don't have a lot of adequate training and you don't have a lot of real life exposure, when the stuff hit the fan, you're drawing from what you already have in you, and if you don't have a lot, then you are in a very difficult position. So I think that one innovative way to help policing um, improve is to get officers more training, more force on force training, more de-escalation training, and get them in ways in which they can be exposed to scenarios that they typically aren't exposed to in their line of work.
Yes.
So
Yes.
these are the things that I think that can be conducive for police, and that can make things better. I know that a lot of people want to, you know, let me give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
The George Floyd reform bill, or whatever the thing is. First of all, they should have never named it after George Floyd, because I don't think he's a good example, in my opinion, of anything that's reformist, right?
Right.
Because they did the same thing about Breonna Taylor. There's nothing that you could reform that would have saved George Floyd's life.
Hmm.
Kneeling on somebody's neck is already against the law. They
Right.
do not train you as a cop to kneel on somebody's neck until they die. That
Correct.
is not in the protocol. So there's no police reform that we can gather from that situation that could have changed it. The cop is going to do what he did, and he's going to go to jail over it. Breonna Taylor was the same thing. They had the Breonna Taylor law or whatever, where they banned no-knock warrants. Well, they didn't conduct a no-knock warrant on Breonna Taylor's house. They conduct a knock warrant. If they had conduct a no-knock warrant, she probably would be alive today. So the people who have the vested interest in creating these reform laws, they are not doing this for real purposes. They're doing it for virtue signaling and political reasons. They should have talked to police officers. So instead of them coming from a place of hating police and thinking that all police are bad and systemically racist, they should talk to police and say, what do you need to be more successful?
Yes.
And I think that that'll be a better approach, and training is one of those things. You know, also, being a police officer, you have to learn how to be a great communicator.
Yes.
And that's taught, we were taught that, but is that universally taught around the entire United States of America? Are cops taught, how do you communicate? How do you talk yourself out of a deadly force situation when you can avoid it, right? Somebody pull a gun on you, there ain't no talking. But if
Correct.
somebody's at a point where you know they're going through a crisis, that person just need help, how do you teach an officer to say, okay, I may feel like I want to put you in handcuffs and use force against you, but I can use my words to de-escalate. I can use my words to give you the impression that I really care about you, and maybe the outcome will be different. Those are all things that police would argue, we wish we had more time, money to do those trainings, and things would be better.
Man, I have to agree with you on that. I think that's where the biggest misconception is. People just don't know the profession, and that's the reason why I wanted to bring a lot of insight to it. And it's difficult, and I think one of the biggest challenges is that I often I have conversations with people in the military. They're like, "Hey, how come you guys are allowed to do this? We weren't trained that way." I said, "We don't get as much training as you guys get. They run us back to they hot seat us back and forth like nonstop." There's not a lot of I won't say there's not a lot of quality. There's different levels of quality of officers in the profession, and it's a difficult problem to fix, but it can be fixed. And there's a multitude of things that need to be done: better pay, better training, more consistent training. I tell people all the time that we lack in areas of defensive tactics. I don't know about your department, but they taught us one time in the academy, and that was it.
Yeah.
We were told that you had to go out and get your own, self-defense training consistently. I tell people we're taught, but we're not trained, right? But
Right.
we're trained to shoot because we have to shoot twice a year to qualify, but they don't put that same effort in hand-to-hand combat, right? Those are the things that will keep officers alive. For example, like the Patrick Leola case, where the officer shot Patrick in the back of the head. And when I broke the video down, the incident, I'm saying, listen, this is a poorly trained officer. You know, is it necessarily his fault? I mean, no, but at the same time, what I saw was someone who was unable to use any type of defensive tactic skills to subdue a unarmed person. And though it's hard to put a person in handcuffs with two officers, it's very difficult to put someone in handcuffs with one officer who was actively resisting. And but if you know some things, then it makes the job a little bit easier to subdue them and wait for backup. So people don't see that. They don't understand that aspect of it. And I hope that my channel and have, go ahead. What were you about to?
No, I agree.
Oh,
I
yeah.
agree with you. I agree with you 1,000%, man. And I wish that people would understand that. You know, try to put yourself in a position of a police officer. You know, I ask many of these people, have you ever been in a fist fight before? Have you ever been in a fight? Many people have never been in a fight before. And you look at, when you go watch a movie or you go watch, you know, the UFC,
right?
You may think I would have kicked that guy. I'd have swung him. Why is he not punching? It's like because you've never been in a real fight before, and it's not that simple. But here's the thing too: proper training will save so many officers' lives and so many citizens' lives. Absolutely. I was properly trained in self-defense and tactics. I was a perfect 250 shooter with handgun. I was a perfect shooter with rifle. I was very confident in shooting. And so I would be less likely to shoot a person, you know, as a threat, because I am not afraid of this person the way some guys who may not be trained are afraid. Like I had a woman pull a knife on me. I could have shot and killed her. She would have been dead as a doornail.
Right.
She pulled a knife on me. And I know, based on my shooting experience and my tactical experience, that I would have shot her and killed her before she made it to me. I would have hit headshots and it would have been over. Very confident in shooting. She was at enough distance where I could have eliminated her completely as a threat. However, I had enough time to diagnose in a split second that she wanted suicide by cop. She did not want to die. She came at me. I could see her shaking. I pulled my gun out on her. And with the confidence of my shooting ability, my athletic ability, my training, I knew that I had a little bit more time. Another officer would have completely panicked if they did not have the training, and they would have shot her, believing that they would have been inefficient in shooting her if she approached them with a knife.
Yes.
The same thing with fighting. I ended up being a decent fighter because I'm big. You know, I'm 6'2". I was like 230, and I'm a former football player. I'm a college football athlete. Okay. And so when I would fight guys, I had a lot more wind. I was much stronger. I was better trained. And so me knowing that I could whoop you,
right,
it was less likely for me to fight you because I was a little more patient. Like, sir, you're like, you know, I'm not afraid of you. I know that you're running your mouth, but if you step over this line, you're gonna get served.
Exactly.
The problem is that officers don't have that confidence. So when it start heating up, I gotta tase them. I gotta shoot him. I gotta pull my gun out. Oh my God, I'm gonna lose this fight. Like the Leola case or whatever his name was. I feel like that officer wasn't physically training because he was smoked at the very beginning. He was breathing hard. He was out.
He was out. Yeah.
And by the time he got on the guy's back, he was spent.
Yep.
And people don't understand that when you spent and now the guy's gotten your taser, in your mind, not what people see, in your mind, I can't fight anymore.
Correct.
If the other guy comes and attacks me from the back, if this guy somehow rolls over on me, I am going to die.
Yep.
And people don't understand that. But if the officer had adequate training, if the police department encouraged physical fitness training, I don't know about you guys, we had to qualify one time, physical fitness in academy.
That's it.
We didn't have to qualify anymore.
Yep.
We had officers that 300 some pounds, couldn't jump a fence, couldn't do a foot pursuit. And when they started, they had to pass the mile and a half and do the push-ups and sit-ups and all that. And now 15 years later, 10 years later, 8 years later, they're immobile. They're worthless police officers in a tactical situation or in a use of force situation.
Absolutely. And they are a threat and a danger to not only officers, but to citizens. And they're a danger to citizens because I tell people all the time, if you put this officer in fear for his life, doesn't matter what you think is fearful. In that moment, if he's unable to defend himself, protect himself, you're out of here. The officer is justified in taking your life. Do not put yourself in a situation where someone else has to dictate your life, your freedom. And that's what I tell people all the time. You can only control your choices. You cannot control the consequences. You can't dictate what this officer is going to do if you put him in a bad situation. And, you know, and a lot of people don't understand that. And to your point, I'm a critical thinker. I took time to train. I have training in martial arts. I was very confident in my ability to subdue a person with my hands. I looked forward to it. You know, I'm not as big as you. You know, I'm 5'10", barely with the shoes on, right? And so I'm 190. I'm 200 pounds now. Brother's been eating good. But back then it was, you know, I wasn't necessarily physically intimidated. And so people would try me, but my demeanor would always discourage them. I was always peacefully talking. But I always reminded people I will not hesitate to put these hands on you. We can either go to jail or you can go to the hospital. And then you go to the jail anyways. You know, and so to your point, I say this, people think I'm making excuses. And I'm saying where you see racism, I see a stupid officer. Where you see racism, I see an untrained officer. You know, and so again, we get into this conversation where I'm trying to bring insight, and then people think I'm caping for the police. You know, no, I'm caping for the truth.
You're never gonna like one thing I learned, and I think you know this already as well. It's for the people who are listening. You're never gonna satisfy certain people. They hate the cops no matter what you say. They don't care. Like that's you know, people don't put this in perspective. There's a guy that in a cigar lounge with me, he's a cardiologist, right?
Yeah.
It's like me arguing with him about cardiology.
Right.
I ain't never done, I don't know nothing. I can Google about the heart, but I've never done open heart surgery. Right. I've never done none of that stuff. And that's like me watching him do open heart surgery and say, why did he use the sutures that way? Why did they go for the heart first? Why did they go to this? And he would ask me, what training do you have to be able to give a fair synopsis of what I'm doing wrong? And the same thing with policing. You say, listen, I was a cop. I never met a racist cop. I met a few stupid ones. I met cops who were racially insensitive, which means that they didn't grow up in the hood. They don't grow up around, and even not in the hood. They don't know how black people feel because they ain't black. They don't know the underlying reasons why black people feel a certain way that I could speak to, but they couldn't speak to. Is that racism? No, it's not. Just like when I go into a Hispanic community, some of my guys who speak Spanish, the officers that speak Spanish with me, they get it in quicker than me. They understand Hispanic culture. They understand people who speak Spanish, and they get to talking to them, and they don't want to talk to me no more. I'm chopped liver. They want to talk to Officer Valenzuela because he's speaking Spanish to him. And so does that mean that I'm racist against Hispanic people? No, that means that I may not understand the culture. That's why diversified police departments are a really good measure. The problem is we try to recruit black police officers to no avail. Why? Because the media has brainwashed the profession or brainwashed people into believing that this is not an honorable profession. The community, we saw the video, and I'm sure you saw the video too, the little boys fighting the police officer and calling them the N-word and hitting them. And that stuff is learned from a very young age to hate the police. When in fact, if mama and daddy told them, hey, one day you grow up and you be the change you want to see. You go and be a police officer. And what should happen in the inner city that don't happen for whatever reason is they should be passing out applications to the police department. Yeah. All the men over 21 years old, you don't have a criminal record, you go and sign up and you take over the police department, right? You get, if you're 400 of y'all, let me see, the chief in Dallas, Chief Brown. Now he's now the commissioner or whatever they call it in Chicago. But Chief Brown, he during the BLM protest, he came out and said, I will put you in your community. I will put you in the community you grew up with. Right. Put the protest signs down, fill out an application, you make it through the department, and I'll let you patrol your own communities. I wish that we had a warrior mindset instead of a victim mindset when it comes to policing. Take over the police department, become police officers, become police sergeant, have a mindset like I did, that one day I will become the police chief and I'm gonna run this department the way I think is best. I'm going to change the way we train. I'm going to make sure that we have good communication skills. I'm going to make sure our police officers are mandated to pass a physical exam every single year. I'm going to fight to pay these police officers now, and police chiefs don't have that control. Maybe the sheriff does, but the municipal police don't have control over the budget. It's the city council. But I'm going to fight that you get paid more because we want better qualified people. I'm going to go out in the community to make sure we have community relationships. We're going to do community policing when we have staff to do it. All of those things are objectives that a man with the right mindset will say, this is the approach to make things better. You can't complain about law enforcement officers and get mad because the white guys are in the community not understanding the black issues when y'all not applying, when y'all not going for the position. And guys like you and I, we do it. And then our people come after us. And I'm telling you, I'm just doing my part, brother. Ain't you glad I'm here?
Right.
Aren't you glad that your son see a man that's a black man in uniform? Or don't that make you feel proud? So I'm here doing my part. Won't you put an application in? Those are the things that bother me when I feel like that the system doesn't correct itself.
Correct.
The people correct the system.
Fact.
If you want policing to change, become a police officer and be the change. You know, I had an opportunity when I was a cop, and I'm a believer, is that I wasn't just a police officer, man. I was a vessel that God used to speak life to people. There's some people that had to catch the hands. That's just the way it is. They wanted that. They wanted to fight. I have to defend myself, and I have to use a reasonable amount of force necessary to execute an arrest. And sometimes that take them getting punched in the face.
Facts.
Sometimes that has to happen. But once I dust them off, I don't hold a grudge. I say, man, don't do that again. This could have been handled better. God has another purpose for your life. You going to jail now, get out and do something different.
Yep.
You have a better purpose. I would tell people that I arrest, dude. I chase them down. We both out of breath. Brother, you don't need to be in this position. One kid, I never forget him. He reminded me of my cousin. My cousin doing 70 years in prison. He's up for parole. He may be up parole recently, and so that'd be 20 years in prison he did. No reason he done that much time in prison. It was all his fault, but it's sad that he had to do that much time. Another guy that I caught, whole family, life of crime. This kid he hijacked he stole a car. We got him on the airplane. We got him on the helicopter, so he don't know we're watching him, but we can see him. He stole a car. He's in the car. He ditched the car. He jumps in the car with a random person, which was weird. He jumps out on the freeway. I'm training a rookie at the time. Me and the rookie pull up on him. He got a handful of drugs, a bag full of it. Had heroin, crack, weed, pills, a handful of drugs.
Yeah.
We catch him. He throw the drugs behind his back like he was LeBron James, bro. And I remember him sitting in the car. He started crying because he was on probation and he was going to do 25 years in prison. That was his minimum. He had to go back and do 25. He violated probation. And I remember him crying in the car. You know, of course, these criminals tell you that they bad to the bone and they crying.
Always crying.
Yeah. He's crying in the car, but he's talking about his grandmother. And in that instance, bro, I feel like that's like my cousin all over again. And I felt pity for him. I felt sad for his grandmother because I know what my grandmother went through when my cousin went to prison for 70 years. I know how I hurt the family. And I remember talking to him and being like, why would you do this to your grandma, man?
Yep.
Why would you do this to your grandma? You had no reason to be out here doing drugs and selling drugs. And he just crying, and then he snitched on everybody. And then he didn't realize that if you're on probation, you can't be an informant. So you snitch for no reason. But that's on him. You know what I'm saying? So he thought he was going to be an informant that day, and he snitched on everybody. But anyway, I tell that story to say, that, cops are humans, man. I wish people would understand that. I wish people would do ride-alongs.
Yep.
A ride-along is what caused me to become a police officer and inspired me to believe in police officers and want to be the change I wanted to see.
Absolutely. That's a dope story. And I tell people why people ask, I tell people all the time, every police officer is not created equal, to give them an understanding that we are all human beings wearing a uniform. And people ask me about what makes officers different. I said, people ask me, hey, are you going to admit that the KKK are in policing? I said, everybody's in policing, good, bad, and ugly. But the question is, what are you going to do about it? To your same response, you got to get in to change the system. A lot of people don't agree with that. So me, I was a problem solver for my department. I have tactical training as well. But I was tasked with solving issues. I was good at it. So I look at this as a problem that needs to be solved. You don't like the police, right? You don't want white officers policing your community. That's fine. We can do that. Then you need to sign up and put more black people in that job. I call it Operation Chocolate Chip, right? So if you want to do it, get in it, right? I don't want to hear you complain. Now, at the same time, if you don't want police, you got some groups in our community, we don't want the system, the white man system. We don't want nobody in it, right? We don't want no part of it. Cool, I got a solution for you too. Then do the job yourself. The NOI do it. You know, you have some communities that do it, and they do it very effectively. I said, but if you are going to police your own people, you got to have an answer to the crime, right? And let's not act like if the police disappear that the criminals go away too. It doesn't work like that. You know, we had that in Atlanta where Keisha Lance Bottoms, bless her heart, right? She tore the city up. And so bad policy and trying to massage the feelings of people who don't want to obey the law tore the city apart in Atlanta. The Rayshard Brooks situation, she was trying to defend the suspect's decision instead of properly educate the people on police policy and procedure. And you could say it's tragic. You could say it shouldn't have happened, but you got to be honest with the people and say, hey, I hate that he did it, but the law supports the officer's action. The law and the policy, the officer was in policy. I wish there was another way, you guys, but she didn't do that. And it created a lot of turmoil, right? And so again, we have a problem when we're not being honest with the people and we're not educating them properly on the law and police procedures. Now, granted, we know, and I tell people all the time, one could argue that the police do an amazing job of not killing people in this country. When you look at the amount of arrests that they make, the amount of police contact that they make a year, when we look at how many people unfortunately die from a police encounter, about 1,100 approximately every year, one could argue the officers are doing a great job. They are very disciplined when it comes to that. But this leads into a conversation now of what about those who aren't doing a good job? And I think this is where, you know, again, I think that we have a lot in common in understanding this profession. I think where I start hearing a lot of dissenting opinions when it comes to Brandon, it's always around Brandon don't hold the police accountable, right? Or it's one of those things where it's like, hey, Brandon don't hold the police accountable. Or hey, hold on. Honestly, people say, listen, Brandon's a sellout. And when it comes to police issues, he does not hold them accountable, even when evidence shows and supports that the officers, one, violated the law, two, the officers did something unethical. He still tries to find a way to justify their wrong behavior.
This is the problem with people, man. You know, and I realize that people want to be right so bad that they are willing to disregard facts. I have never been wrong about a judgment of policing according to the law. Never. Okay. I said all of the police interactions that I've given, I've 100% predicted that they weren't going to get prosecuted. I 100%. I 100% predicted when they were going to get prosecuted. Amber Geiger was a police officer off duty. I said Amber Geiger was wrong. She's going to jail. What she did? She went to jail. Laquan McDonald, that officer shot Laquan McDonald 12 times, killed him before he hit the ground. He was the only officer that shot Laquan during that time. Even though Laquan was on PCP and doing all that other crazy stuff, they said he's going to get charged with first-degree murder because he got on the radio and said, I may have to kill this guy. I said, no, he's not. He's going to get charged with second-degree murder. It's because it's an impossibility to predict that he's going to kill a person and say that it's premeditated when the guy is actively doing things that are necessitating a police response. Second-degree murder. People want me to say that the officer that killed, they wanted me to say the officer that killed Michael Brown was wrong. DOJ investigation proved that the officer was justified in his use of force. They want me to say Eric Garner was wrong. Did they charge the officer? No, they didn't. Why didn't they not charge the officer? Because Brandon Tatum know what he's talking about, because I'm judging this based on the law, based on reasonableness and use of force policy. And I have been correct. There's no video that anybody can find that says that Brandon says that the officer weren't going to get charged or that shouldn't get charged, and they did get charged, whatever the case would be. Didn't happen. Breonna Taylor, I had inside information on Breonna Taylor. I knew for months what exactly happened, had the transcripts, had the investigation, 40-page document. I couldn't disclose it because I didn't want to mess up the investigation. But I knew that the officer Madeline didn't do anything wrong. I knew Sergeant Madeline. I knew that the police officers didn't do anything wrong. I knew what protocol is. I mean, I know what protocol is, and I know what SWAT operation is, and I know that they didn't do a no-knock warrant. And so people were upset with me about that. I mean, I think some people get mad at and say I make excuses. I don't. I give an explanation. See, people can't compartmentalize things. They can't believe that an officer is wrong and the bad guy is wrong. They only go with, if the officer is wrong, then the bad guy is Jesus Christ and he couldn't do no wrong. And they also don't want to go with the fact that if it looks bad, but it is legal according to the law, that they think I'm supposed to say this officer is wrong because it looks bad. The officers in the situation just recently, well, Rashard Brooks situation. According to the policy, when a person turns around and shoots a taser at you, that's an act of deadly force. And therefore you can shoot that person. And I'm explaining that when he's shooting at the officer and he turns, the officer is already engaging him. So of course he ended up hitting him in the back at some point.
Right.
You know, the new situation that's out. People they shouldn't have shot him 60 times. And it's like, well, first of all, let's go through the fact, are they justified in shooting him at all?
Yeah, Jalen Walker you're referring to, right?
Jalen Walker.
Yeah.
Are they justified in shooting him at all? The answer is yes. When you look at the escalation of force, people don't want to look at it. They tried to tase him first, and it failed. And then every officer reacted to him at one time. It wasn't like one officer shot him and the rest of them was like, okay, I'm gonna jump in. They all scattered like this because he went to turn around, and they were reporting all separately that it looked like he went and took a shooter stance and he pulled something from his waistband.
Right.
Now, when you have that many officers shooting, each individual officer is diagnosing a threat. It's going to always look bad when you have a bunch of officers diagnosing one threat because they're all going to shoot at one time. And if they all shoot a lot, then it's going to be 60 rounds.
Correct.
Should they have not shot him that many times? I think we can argue that maybe they shouldn't. But that's like in hindsight. That's like after the fact. At the time, any reasonable person that interviewed those officers, they're going to say, because you can see on the video, he's still moving on the ground. Probably because he's taking them rounds.
I was about to say, yeah.
But to the eye. So this is the thing. When you're shooting and you see a guy moving, this is not the movies. This is not the officers are not hearing what you hear on a video. You hear on the video, pop, 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 pop. The officers are going deaf. Because if somebody ever shot a gun without ear protection, your ears are ringing, you're going deaf. Now you're hearing shots. How do you know he's not shooting back at you? In that chaotic situation, shots are being fired. Some officers may be perceiving they're getting shot at. Some officers may be perceiving he's still trying to go for a gun. All of these different perceptions are going on all at one time. That's what leads to a situation like that. But you got to understand that they're pursuing this guy. The guy fires a shot. One guy gets on the radio and said he's just fired a shot. Every officer responding is now perceiving that this guy is probably going to shoot it out with them once they get him under control. Right. They get to the car, they're screaming. He jumps out with a ski mask. He has a ski mask on. He jumps out of a car while it's moving. The other officers already believe that he's shooting at officers. You know, it's not going to end well for you. And I wish that people would understand that.
And I think that's where, again, I see value in your platform, right? And platforms like mine, where we get a chance to actually give people a view into the world of law enforcement that they wouldn't quite understand. Unfortunately, the dynamics in this country now when it comes to race relations is a big issue. So people are hypersensitive, especially our community is hypersensitive, and they have a reason to be, right? When we look at the historical context with law enforcement. So I don't blame them, right? We also can't deny that we've had police departments who have been disingenuous. They have been corrupt. They've hidden evidence. They've tried to cover things up. They've been caught. So we have these things. And I think that the lack of transparency from incidents that might not be in Georgia or Texas or Arizona, but it's in another state, people look at it as it's the entire profession, right? You find out there's one corrupt police department or maybe 3 corrupt officers and a police department that might not be corrupt. It's an indictment on the entire profession. And I think some people, again, don't separate that well, which, okay, cool. I understand that. In reference to this shooting, though, I think this highlights kind of our difference in approach when we're looking and examining police encounters, because me personally, I come to the conclusion when a citizen is wrong, the citizen's wrong because the law is broken, right? If the law is broken, then there's nothing really for you to say. I don't really have to examine that because we already knew what they did was wrong. When it comes to law enforcement, when people don't understand, they don't understand the profession. So when I look at it, I'm examining the officer's behavior based on policy, behavior based on training, and behavior based on the law. And I give people that perspective. I give them a more well-rounded view so that they understand. So when I'm actually critiquing law enforcement officers, I'm like, if this officer followed the protocol and the policy, this would have looked different. If the officer's training would have been better, this outcome would have been different. And so I like to examine because I know that we can do better than a lot of times that we do, right? And so with that situation, the Jalen Walker situation was very unique because you had so many officers on the scene. What am I looking at? I'm looking at the training of the officers. You know, we don't, at the end of the day, I said that shooting looked like a firing squad. It looked very barbaric. People are just now witnessing what the job looks like because now we have all these cameras now. It's always looked barbaric. It always looks bad when you're applying force in a situation. I always look at it, what are people asking of us to do? I believe society has a very, very high expectation that was set by movies and things like that. Cool. I'm cool with that. My question is, can law enforcement rise to the expectation that the citizens are asking? Can we do a better job? You know what I mean? And training, to me personally, plays a major role in this. And what you said earlier in reference to how do you train officers on a deadly scenario when you can't fabricate that? When you're in a life and death situation as an officer, there's no way to train for that. But what you can do is train better trigger discipline. What you can do is train more scenarios. I think the issue I had with that shooting is that some of the officers on the scene lacked situational awareness and they lacked trigger discipline. And they were unable to determine when Jalen Walker was no longer a threat, which led to an excessive amount of firing, which I believe was excessive. I think it was grossly excessive. Now, I do, to your point, what a lot of people don't understand, and I try to explain it, they drag me too for it, right? So again, I come in as an educator, and they still drag me. The reality is they don't understand. They never heard of sympathetic fire and what that means. But sympathetic fire is something to an untrained officer, right? It's a knee-jerk reaction. You shoot him like, oh shit, bam, and I'm shooting too. And it's like, why'd you shoot? I don't know. I thought he shot back. But when you're lost in the tunnel vision, it's easy to get sucked into a situation. And the citizens don't know that. I know that. You know that. My thing is, I acknowledge that. And I say, how can we prevent that? You know, I always tell people, comply to survive. At the end of the day, if you don't put yourself in a situation, you won't leave it up. It's Russian roulette. You don't know how well trained these officers are. You gamble it. And I think the issue is people are saying, though this person may have violated the law, though they resisted arrest, should that be considered a death sentence? And I say absolutely not. But
that's not what, people like to equate that. It's like abortion. They like to say, well, if a mother is dying, you add the extras. That's not what is actually happening here. Right. Like the guy, so for instance, people don't watch my videos either. They already hate me because my success and all this. And then I keep it real and I talk about the suspect too. I trash the cops and I trash the suspect. They don't like that. If you watch my video, I go back and give a critique on what I think they should have done differently in hindsight. And I talk about the pursuit. I talk about the fact that they all crowded the car at one time instead of somebody flanking the guy because they know once he start getting out the car, instead of running to him, go and cut him off. I've never used a taser a day in my career. Never used a taser. I was always hands on. I never used a taser. Either I'm putting my hands on you or I'm not.
Up when I got it. sounds
I
like
knuckle up, or they comply. I never have to pull the taser out because I either not finna fight you or we gonna fight.
right.
And a lot of times people, they back down from that challenge. So, but anyway, I feel like they could have done it differently. Even when I was speaking about the shooting, I saw that there was an officer that was waving ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire.
Wow.
Now, I think that at that point, he had an observation of ceasefire, ceasefire. He was telling the other officers to cease fire. Now, of course, in a perfect world, in the right world, they would have heard him and they would have stopped shooting him. Now, he was already dead because if every officer shot him once, he got shot 6 times. So if every officer shot twice, boom, boom, he shot 12 times. I mean, it was over for him before it ever started. However, in order for it not to seem excessive, like you said, situational awareness. If it was 2 officers on this situation, we wouldn't have had this problem.
This is true.
They would have shot him 2 or 3 times. They would have saw that he wasn't moving. It would have been over. The problem is that you can't train and you can't predict scenarios where you have 6, 7 officers responding to an active shooter person. We've seen this happen before, and people. I understand what the public thinks, and I feel the same way when I saw the video, but people have to understand logic and reality. What do you think realistically these officers would do in that scenario? Do you think that an officer will run to the scene, the guy poses as a threat, and officers are going to say, hey, you shoot, I'm not going to shoot? That's not reasonable, because you have to, and I notice a lot of explaining, and public will think it's excuses, but when you're responding code 3, some people never responded code 3 in their life. They don't even know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Lights and sirens, code 3, you begin to feel the adrenaline and tunnel vision, right? I know I've been to this plenty of times, but being trained, you don't get tunnel vision as much.
Correct.
You start to go, you're going 70, 80 miles per hour. You don't see the guy. You hear on the radio, the guy's going on the freeway, he's shooting at the officers. You go 70 miles per hour. When I get there, this could end in a shootout. You've already seen officers get killed before. You don't want to die. You don't want to kill nobody. All of these emotions are overtaking you.
Is there a way to fix that? Is there a way to address that? Because
it's a way to address it, but it's impossible to perfect it. Now, you can train officers to do this, right? And 5 or 6 years later, they're then exposed to it.
Right.
If it was easy enough to say every officer be trained on every shooting scenario right before the shift, and then they go on shift, and then if they experience it, they just got the training. The problem is that you train active shooter, you train shooting scenario, force on force, and you may go 15 years without ever shooting anybody.
That's very true. And
then all of a sudden, 15 years later, you are now facing a life and death situation, and it's all. If you're not, like, I was on a SWAT team, so every 2 weeks we did intense 10-hour training, thousands of rounds of ammo, use of force, tactics. We did training every 2 weeks that the police department never got. It was only the SWAT team got that much training. So in a scenario, and I've been in plenty of them, where, and I also am built different than some people, like I don't have fears that other people have. Like life and death is, I think I'm going to win every time. So
yeah, that's a thing too.
When I respond to a scene, I'm thinking I'm better than this guy. I'm going to kill this guy if it comes down to it. Death is not an option for me. But I've also been training with my rifle, thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds, hundreds of different scenarios, shoot, no shoot scenarios, and I'm proficient at distance. I'm used to moving and shooting. I'm used to tactically, and I have vest on, all of these things. So when I show up to a scene, I don't go like this. I don't think life and death, life and death. I get to a scene and I'm composed. I'm like, all right, I've been through this force on force scenario before. Let's approach here. Here, go to the side. Let's flank. Let's move in. We'll give commands. If he don't drop the gun, then it's over for him. And every officer, I wish in a perfect world that we all could be bold, brave, courageous,
correct,
train well. But that's just not you rolling the dice, bro. Like you could, like right now, just say one of us go out and we decide, F the police. I'm gonna get out, I'm gonna fight one of these dudes. You may get a dude that's pretty proficient and they're calm and they're patient and they're not afraid of you. They're like, dude, I'll whoop you. Get back in the car, sir.
Right.
You pull a gun, I'm gonna kill you. Get back in the car, sir. Sir. Or you may get a rookie that's fresh out the academy. And when they come out the academy, everybody's trying to kill you, right?
Facts.
Everybody's trying to kill you. You got to watch out. They show you. We used to get emails of officer deaths every day, and we read through them because you want to not let that happen to you. So everybody trying to kill you. Everybody got a gun, officer safety, and you get out, and a guy that's bigger than you jump out on you. What's up, young thugger? And then your vision go like this. You start thinking all the times that officers were killed in this situation. You pull out a gun, drop the gun, and then you shoot a guy. And you could get two different officers, man. You get a guy straight out the academy versus a veteran. You get a bad cop versus a good cop. You get a well-trained cop versus a cop that's been on admin leave for the last 6 months. You know what I'm saying? Or been on desk duty.
And then they mistake their gun for their taser.
That lady, people say, you don't never hold people accountable. I trashed her so bad, I felt bad afterwards. I trashed her so bad in that video because that's completely unacceptable.
It is.
He's a dummy, but what she did was unacceptable. Anyway, so
and I agree, and that goes to the point. People want to know, I guess, and I haven't seen all your videos. I haven't seen your video on that one. I try to explain to people that time does not equate to quality in this profession.
Right.
It's about what you're actually experiencing. I was a go-getter officer. My hands was always in the mud, and I was doing stuff, always going after criminals. And so I got out of my tunnel vision really early. I had opportunity. I had to use my gun in the field. A lot of officers make it their whole career and never have to pull the trigger. It's a blessing, right? It's not anything to brag about. And so again, it's one of those things that when you go through it, you don't feel that anymore. With that situation, and again, when I'm looking at these cases, and I think perfect examples of Breonna Taylor. My issue with the Breonna Taylor situation, I think, is a perfect opportunity to bring this comparison up, is obviously 32 rounds, I think approximately 32 rounds in that house, in the apartment, I believe was one excessive, and that's not how we are trained, right? I'm looking at and critiquing the officers. Are we trained to shoot in the dark? Are we trained to shoot at an object or a person without properly identifying the target? Is that how training works? Should there have been a flashlight? Now, and again, the counter argument is, well, it's the heat of the moment. And I think the issue I have sometimes is when I hear officers make counter arguments going against what we're supposed to be trained to do, is that I feel like we end up coddling officers. We end up putting a handicap on them and preventing them from striving to try harder or be better, or to live up to the expectations of, I guess you would say, what the citizens say we should be living up to, in a sense, right?
Yeah, but it's very difficult for people to understand, right? So I talked to Sergeant Mattingly, right? He was the one that got shot at the front door.
Right.
Now, all the officers were cleared. But what people don't get an insight on is,
but just because you're clear doesn't mean you're not wrong, though.
Right. But it means that, well, first of all, this is what it means. You didn't commit a crime, right? Because you're innocent until proven guilty. So if they don't have enough evidence to prove that you committed a crime, you're innocent. Now, you could have broken protocol, and there could be things that you should have done better, even if you're not guilty. Because guilty is criminality. Guilty isn't whether you messed up. You can still be fired and not be guilty.
That's true. And citizens don't understand that comparison, though. Right.
You should be fired and not be guilty. Okay. Like, and there's plenty of scenarios of that occurred. But Sergeant Mattingly explained to me what he saw. Right. He comes to the door. They're doing a knock warrant because they had a no knock exception. See, people don't know the difference between no knock exception and no knock. When you're on the SWAT team, the judge will approve a no knock exception. They got no knock exceptions on multiple locations because Jamarcus Glover was the armed and dangerous suspect. Breonna Taylor wasn't. She was an accomplice, but she would consider the non-dangerous subject. So they didn't know which house he was going to be at, and they hit all these houses simultaneously. They got a tip at the last minute that Jamarcus Glover was at the trap house. So they sent the SWAT team to the trap house. They conducted a no-knock warrant, But Breonna Taylor's house, they determined that she wasn't, so they only send guys there that weren't tactical guys. Like Sergeant Manley wasn't even I don't even think he was on the streets at the time. He was doing something else, but he volunteered to come and just knock on the door and do a warrant. So what happened was they had a no-knock exception. So they had a warrant to go in her house. They did not use the no-knock exception. They ended up announcing. So they announced police. They knocked on the door. They heard a response from inside the door. Who is it? And so they decided to breach the door. And they rammed the door multiple times, yelling, police. There was a witness on the scene that said they heard him yell police. Now, there was other witnesses that didn't hear him, but once you find out, they were afraid of retaliation. So anyway, they breached the door, and Sergeant Madley tells me once he goes in the door, he sees Walker, points the gun right at him, and starts to fire. Now, Walker is in front of Breonna. Breonna is in the hallway, this little tight hallway. Walker is in the front of Breonna. Walker pulls out the gun, and the shootout begins. The two officers that are in the door, boom, Mattingly gets shots. He's returning fire at Walker. The other officers shooting over the top of him, returning fire at Walker. Unfortunately, what Walker did was after he shoots, he ducks down behind Breonna Taylor and into the room. Breonna Taylor is in the middle of him and the officers exchanging in the gunfire. So she ended up getting tagged multiple times. Those two officers were acting within protocol and reasonable. The other officer, Hankinson or whatever, and I ended up apologizing to him because he ended up being acquitted. He wasn't charged. But once I heard his explanation,
should he have been charged though? Shooting blind?
No, when I hear his explanation and I hear exactly what happened, I don't think he should have been charged. So what he is explaining is happening is that he's seeing his officer get shot. He's hearing shots fired, and he's trying to address the threat through the window. Now, I was very critical of him, and I trashed him real bad at first. And then I had to go back and apologize because I understand why he did what he did. You know, it's easy to say the protocol is you can't shoot through the window. You can't shoot in an obstructed view. That's not the right protocol, which I think he violated that protocol.
Absolutely.
But when you look at his diagnosis of the situation that's occurring, you got a guy shooting your guys, and you're in a position to try to address the threat in the position that you're in. It's almost impossible to expect for him to hear the shots going on and for him to run for cover or something. So I can understand why he did what he did. What he did wasn't what I would have done, and it wasn't protocol. And I trashed him for it because if I would have done that on my department, I would have been fired
and charged.
And if I was on a SWAT team, I wouldn't have been charged, but I think that if I was on a SWAT team, I would have no longer been on the SWAT team, and there was a potential that I could have been fired for violating a department policies. When you look at the law, there's no law that says that because none of the shots that he shot really did anything. He shot into drywall. He didn't hit anybody. His rounds didn't penetrate, or his rounds didn't present a threat to anybody. He didn't hit Breonna. So that ended up equating to his actions. But the public don't care about that, right? They don't care about what Sergeant Madley saw because they thinking he's a white cop and he's just shooting Breonna Taylor for no reason. It's like, dude, when a guy shoots you and you go down because the first shot hit him in the leg, you go down, you're going to return fire. And it was unfortunate how that dude kind of put Breonna Taylor as a little shield and let her take the rounds while he crawled and dug through the back room. And unfortunately, she took all the rounds that were supposed to hit him. She was taking them on his behalf,
right?
From what I've seen. But I think that the public, that's why I exist, right? Because I try to give a perspective, and people don't have to agree with me because they can go look at the video for themselves. I try to give a perspective based on training and experience, and also sometimes these officers call me and they talk to me about what happened. So I get a little insight, and sometimes I can't say that I talked to them,
right,
because I can't give it up. Like in Uvalde, I know things about Uvalde that a lot of people don't know because I got people,
right,
all the way from the initial response through the shooting. I know exactly what happened because I know people that was there. But anyway, I think that there is things that we can improve on in policing. There's no doubt in my mind. But like I said, brother, like people are talking to you because they see a big scenario that they want me to kiss the rear end of the media, and I don't. And so they say, Brandon, I always defend officers.
Right.
You know, there's plenty of videos where I'm trashing officers, plenty of videos where I'm trashing officers. But the thing with my channel is that I don't go out and find bad policing and then make review videos. I make review videos on controversial situations in which I feel that the officers are unduly represented.
Okay.
Or like they're wrongly represented, right?
Okay.
And so Laquan McDonald was a big case. I did a video on that. Oh, girl that shot Walker with the taser instead of the what's his name? She shot the kid with the taser, the gun instead of the taser. That was a big case.
Yeah.
And I had to trash her on it because that's what it is.
Right.
You know, even the Uvalde thing, I got to give context to Uvalde, and some officers are gonna have to be held accountable for the missteps that they did that weren't tactically reasonable. I make videos like this all the time. It's just that I don't see every police interaction. If a police officer does something wrong and goes to jail, I don't need to make a video about it because the officer was wrong. He was prosecuted. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
We arrested guys on our department that did things wrong. Unfortunately, we can't play God. You know, like there's guys that get on the police department that are bad when they get there.
That's true.
And then there's guys who are good and they go bad.
That's very true. And I think that's another thing too. I was asking people what kind of questions would they want me to ask you, and one of them is, and they asked me this too, and I have to tell them they don't understand how corruption works. They don't understand, to your point, that officers start good, they end bad, they're corruptible. I wasn't a corruptible person. And so if they were bad officers, they did not hang out with me, they didn't associate with me. They tend to attract other bad officers. And sometimes you're a good officer and you're put in a situation where, oh man, this drug dealer got a lot of money on him. You know, I might just skim some other. The next, you know, you're down a dangerous path. You know, this leads us to, and I know I can't keep you too long, but things like the blue wall of silence and things of that nature. And I try to explain to people that, again, you have bad people, and sometimes it's 2, 3, 4. Sometimes it could be a supervisor. It comes in all different forms and shapes and sizes. So to what you were saying, you've seen corrupt officers in your department. You've seen them arrested. Can you explain to the people quickly, like what that looked like? Because some people believe that hey, have you ever turned in a bad officer? I said, no, but I've seen them arrested in my department. I've stood next to them. What are your thoughts on that?
So yeah, this is a very interesting question because the blue wall of silence thing is very weird to me because you know and I know.
Right.
Neither one of us like bad officers.
Correct.
I would never come. Bro, I got a pension. I got a family. I got kids. I got endeavors on the police department. I'm not going there. I'm not finna lie for you.
Exactly.
You're one guy. You're gonna go to jail if you're doing something wrong. I'm not finna lie for you, bro. And your supervisor definitely not finna lie for you. I mean, generally speaking.
Correct.
The people that know policing know when you get higher up, they throw you under the bus and they back over you.
Yep.
And so you could be doing the right thing. Your upper command, they're gonna throw you under the bus. So the blue wall of silence is a very interesting concept. Our police officers tend to be more biased towards their brothers and sisters. Yes. If you commit, like for me, if you commit a crime, I can't help you, bro.
Right.
I can't help you. But if you hit the guy, if you hit the guy 2 or 3 more times than you should have, I'll tell that you did it.
Right.
But my perspective on you doing it makes sense to me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because he the bad guy and you the good guy.
Correct.
And so I'm not gonna lie on you, but my perspective is gonna be different. My perspective is gonna see the police officer whom I know personally. And my response is in good faith because I believe the man is in good faith. Just like your own family members. Ain't nobody gonna go out and trash nobody at a funeral. No, you're not. You know he was a drug dealer. You know he's bad. He was beating his wife. You ain't gonna say it at a funeral. So,
and are you gonna turn him in? Right? Are we gonna turn your family member in who's a criminal? Right.
Right. But the thing is, if your family member commits murder, okay, you ain't got no choice, man. You gotta. But are you gonna go through and say all this crazy stuff about your family member? Your tendency subconsciously is for you. You're probably not gonna just drag them.
Right.
And so with policing, officers probably give the benefit of the doubt to their other officers more so than people want to admit to it. But nobody's going to cover for a criminal, man. That's just not going to happen. We arrested a guy in our department. And this is how corruption happens, and there's no way of telling. Every FTO I had that went through the process with me, well-respected guys, great police record, former military, they all were clean cut. They took me through the system. I was a great officer. They trained me how to be a good officer. We had a guy straight out of the military, clean record, squared away, boots shine every day, clean cut, face shaved, yes, sir. He had a beautiful wife and family. This guy made it through the academy, FTO, flying colors. Like I said, he was a veteran, former military. This guy had some of the raving reviews out of any recruit that has come through our academy. My FTO couldn't say nothing but great things about it. Right. Everybody thought this guy was the next really good guy. This guy took a prostitute. It's a movie theater, and the parking garage is dead. Nobody's using it, and there's no lights in there. So at night, it's completely black. This fool took a prostitute down in there who is arresting. He coerced her, raped her. I don't know if she said yes. It doesn't matter. He had sex with this woman. She run from him. She broke loose and ran from him. He gets on the radio and he says, "I got one running." Now, when you say that on the radio, everybody's flying. You know, everybody want to get in on the action.
Right.
But he did something weird that obviously alerted every officer that responded. He said, "I got one detained. I'm en route to jail." Wait a minute, dude. You got one running. You don't call out that you got them detained. You don't call out that they're 10:15. Our detention is 10:15.
Same here.
They're in the car. You don't say none of that. You on the way to jail? No officers were able to respond yet. So that was very bizarre. He gets to the jail. We doing a booking center. We have a bathroom just for police officers. You got to ask the booker for the key. You get the key. You go into one restroom for cops. He takes the condom he used. He puts it in the trash can, not the toilet, the trash can in that bathroom. And they know and people don't understand this too. Every complaint we investigate.
Right.
And then we end up yelling that most of it is lies.
Right.
This girl says he raped me, right? And so everybody in there is like, whatever, but we still have to investigate it.
Mm-hmm.
They investigate it. We have GPS trackers on our computers. We have GPS tracker on our radios, and then we have all the other stuff. All the other trackers from whatever. They go back and review, and everything she said was correct. They went and did an investigation. They found a condom in the toilet.
Damn.
All of the above. This dude got arrested. He was fired from the police department. I was a PIO when all this happened.
Okay.
I'm telling this story to let people know that why you don't turn into bad cops. Nobody knew that this guy was capable of doing what he did. Let me give you a scenario of a bad cop that everybody knew was bad, and it's almost I'm gonna give you two.
All right, do it.
A bad cop that everybody knew was bad, and another cop that I'll give you three people. I'm gonna give you three.
Go ahead. Yeah.
This one cop, I don't know how he started, but I know when I was on the department, he always would. They call him the rubber band man. He was always stretching the law. He was always this close to violating somebody's constitutional rights. He was always this close to using excessive force. Everybody hated him.
Yep.
He goes on a rogue assignment where he goes to an apartment. He don't check out on the radio. Nobody knows he's there. What he tries to do is he tries to do stuff, and if he hit the fan, he walk away from it. Nobody knows. If he need it, he'll call on the radio. "Oh, I got one running." You like, dude, you never checked out on traffic or nothing. Like, what you mean? So he's in this apartment complex on the 11th floor. He's trying to do this secret, trying to catch this crackhead without going on the radio. Ended up going south. She runs and jumps over the balcony on the 11th floor. She's hanging off. We had a hostage negotiation response. Anyway, come to find out this food never checked out. Now he gets in trouble for it, but they can't fire him over it.
Right.
He literally does this all the time, but they can't fire him over it
because of policy.
Because policy dictates that you have to give remedial.
Yeah.
Like, so you violate a policy, you have to give an officer a chance to do remedial. Then you have to give an officer a chance. Then you have to write up in his PPR.
And citizens don't know this part of the job.
It works to the benefit of good officers, and it works to the benefit of bad officers.
Yes.
So a good officer, you may make a mistake. They got to write you up. They got to give you remedial. They have to document in your PPR. Then they have to submit it to a supervisor, and then then they have to go through a review of whether or not you should be fired, you should be put on admin leave, or you should get your job back. Is training going to help you? That helps guys like you and I. That if we make a mistake or we have a bad day, we can recover from it without losing our pension and career.
Correct.
Somebody like him, all of this minutia, but it ruins his reputation, right? Because people somehow think these guys are No, his reputation is gone. He'll never be a supervisor.
And no
Nobody
one
ever want to 84 him.
Yep.
He can't do any investigative units because his
Correct.
reputation is bad. He got too many write-ups. He can never advance on policing. And then what happens is he finally did something off duty where he lied on his cards. So he was saying he was off duty, but he was on duty. Then he got on duty pay for being off duty, something like that. They caught him.
Yeah.
Now let me give you another officer. He's probably still working today. This guy he was in the military, and he's a killer, right? And the guy has no remorse. Like, he's not attached to reality. Like, he could kill a person and wouldn't care.
Right.
He had a very dark side of him. He knew how to fight. He's jiu-jitsu trained or whatever. So he literally walks around with these nerdy glasses on. He's a nerdy white guy with a buzz cut, skinny guy. But the guy has killed people in the military, and the guy has no conscience for humans. I don't think he does, to be honest. He is a weirdo. Yeah. He rode his bike to the academy 25 miles each way every day to the academy. The guy is insane. However, on paper, he does his job like he's supposed to.
Right.
But I know, and other officers know, that if that guy had a chance to kill somebody, he will. Now, is that against the law? No.
Oh.
But I don't think that is a good officer.
Correct.
Because this is the thing. When that lady pulled a knife on me, I could have killed her. But I didn't want to kill her. He would have killed her.
And he'd been justified.
He would have been justified, and he wouldn't have lost any sleep. There's another situation where if it comes to using force, he will use force against you every single time he's eligible to use force against you, and he will put you down. And guys have tried him, and they have lost miserably. Now, I am willing to understand a person and try to talk to them. Sir, please, don't do this. You don't want to go hands-on with me. Trust me, when the rest of the guys come, it's going to be bad for you. Put your hands behind your back, in a place where the guy's not confrontational and I can talk him down.
Right.
This officer is no talking down. Put your hands behind your back. He's going to go through the force continuum just like he's supposed to. And when it's time to put them hands on you, he's going to put them hands on you.
Fact.
The guys, and so you have guys like that.
Yes.
Whose citizens are at risk, like these fools that go out and they do this with police officers. Right. He will shoot you. He got into a shooting, completely justified. He's running after the guy. The guy turns and shoots at him and the officer, and they blaze him. And he lived. The guy lived, but they shot him. And when you hear him talk about it, he don't care.
Right.
He could have killed that guy and he'd have laughed over his grave. So you got people like that, but how do you get a man fired because he's weird, but he's never breaking the law and he's never violating constitutional rights?
Correct.
And I'll give you another guy who recovered. This guy was a great officer, model officer, FTO. He got into an officer-involved shooting and it messed him up, right? It was a justified shooting. He was at distance. He had the rifle. The lady rose the gun up, tried to shoot an officer, and he shot and killed her. He needed help. He went downhill, man. He lost his wife. He lost his kids. Me and him almost had a fight in the briefing. He was losing himself, right? Everybody saw him. He went to a call with some black people, and this didn't go well with the black people.
Correct.
2 guys. He ended up showing up by himself. And on the police department, you don't show up by yourself unless it's a life and death active shooter situation. You wait for your 84 so you can have an adequate response to people.
Correct.
Gets to the call by himself. He got these 2 guys there. One guy has a peg leg. It was like a man with a gun or something, a man with a knife. So he's ordering him to the ground. The guy with the peg leg is saying, I can't get down my leg. I can't bend my leg. A jaded officer who just got into a shooting, whose mind ain't right, he forced the guy down. He throws him on the ground. The guy's grandmother and family begin to come out the unit right in front of where this happened at. He pulls a gun out right on grandma's face. Now, Is that the right thing to do? No. Is that a gray line justification? Because now he's dealing with two people and a bunch of people come out the house attacking him? Maybe. One of the SWAT guys got to him, grabbed him, and drugged him off of the scene and ripped his for at least 5 minutes. A bunch of officers got together because citizens complained on him, and then there was internal complaint. And I was a part of testifying against him internally. So a bunch of officers got together and we said, hey, man, the guy is struggling, man. He's going downhill. He almost fought me. He got this incident with the black people at the apartment complex. He lost his wife. He's a danger. He's circling. He's going downhill. They ended up getting the officer counseling, which is free. We provide free counseling to officers. He recovered. He got married. He's a better officer. So these things happen. They're not just cut and dry, man. Just imagine if we didn't catch him and he got to a point, a guy pulled a gun, or a guy maybe didn't pull a gun, he shot and killed a guy.
Right.
Just imagine the other officer that we can't fire. Just imagine if he get to a point and there's a kid that pull a gun on him and he justify and he shoot and kill the kid. And then another guy pull a gun on him, he shoot and kill that guy. He's not talking, he's not holding back, and he don't care. And somebody interview him after he killed a guy and he show no remorse.
Right.
The public is gonna be outraged, man. And then, like, think about it. Out of all the officers I knew, hundreds, that's just 3 people that I can name that's not doing the right thing. Everybody else, bro, I would put my life and my family's life in their hands. All of these other people going to work every day, speaking life to people just like I was, you know, all of these guys are doing such a tremendous job as police officers, inspiring every day. You get a couple of them that's weird, that gets weird. You know, Chauvin probably was one of those guys. He had those use of force, those complaints that never was validated. One, maybe because people lied on him. Listen, I don't think you can get that many use of force complaints and complaints from the public,
right?
And it not be nothing. Right?
Correct.
I never got any official complaint. I got people that lied on me. You know, like one lady said I lied, whatever, and then they investigated and it's nothing. I had no formal complaints, but I understand if a cop get a few. You know, you may blow up on somebody, cuss them out, and then they complain on you,
which is understandable. And even with that, I've had cases like that in my department. For my academy, same thing. We had a chick complain on a guy. She showed up with the semen on her shirt and was like, "Test this," and they took the shirt, tested it. You know, they had BICE units after them, same problem. So we see it. But it's definitely, man, this is a multi-layered issue, and it's not an easy one to address. People would ask, and I'm gonna close with these last two. I know we gotta bounce. People want to know, how do we filter them out? How do we prevent them from getting in the profession? In my academy, it was the first academy class, I had 50 plus officers. I knew right away. I came from working in the hospital into policing. I knew right away, just looking at about 15 of them, they had no business in there. But I remember hearing from the academy instructor saying they don't want us to get rid of anybody, right? They were failing exams. They were failing shooting qualifications. They kept giving them pass after pass because they needed the bodies. So it's quantity over quality. The citizens then end up taking the brunt of that. The officers take the brunt of that when they come out here. And we had a guy in my department, he shot a naked man and killed him. He was going through a mental health crisis, shot, and the man was out running around, he was naked. The officer shot and killed him. And so he got convicted, of course, and he was a white officer. And so again, these things, officers are held accountable. There are some cases that are on a larger scale where it looks tricky, right? A lot of things looks a little funny. It looks like there's some funny business that goes on sometimes. And just because an officer is not held accountable doesn't mean the officer wasn't wrong. And then I always tell people, though, when it comes to, are we looking at this from a moral perspective or a legal perspective? Morally is subjective. We all have our own perception of what is right and wrong. But if we're examining it by the law is very clear what officers can and cannot do. And we do get a little leeway. And I want to ask you this, qualified immunity. This is a hot button subject. I think this is a good want to end on this as reference. One, how do we filter out bad officers? And then qualified immunity, can it be adjusted? Should it be removed completely? What does that look like? What is your thoughts? How do we fix that aspect of it?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to academy. See, people want diversity, but then they don't want the reality of diversity. They want women's rights, but then they don't want the reality of women's rights.
Right.
There's plenty of women that were in the academy that had no business being cops, but they don't want to. But they want to get more women on the police department. They want to do this. There was people that some black people that shouldn't have been on the police department because they weren't qualified, but they forced these people through. Now, can they do the job? The basic write a case report,
yes, they
respond to it, hope you never get in a shooting. Can they do? Yes, they can do. They can write. They can be a pencil pusher that sit on the side waiting for a call to come out. They can't proactively police. They cannot get into a shooting. They can't get into a stressful situation, or they're gonna put P to bed. They're gonna need somebody like you and me to show up at the scene with them so they don't completely melt down and crumble. So, but the thing is that what is that worth, people?
Right.
You defund them. You don't have adequate to pay. Nobody's want to do that for $35,000 a year.
Right.
Nobody's want to do that for 50. Nobody want to do that if you don't have no great benefits and pension. So what you're gonna have to do is you have to raise the bar. That means, and people ain't gonna want to hear this, the PT standard should be one standard.
Yeah.
If you can't make the standard, you can't be a cop. I don't care if you're a woman or a man.
It needs
you can't
to
make the standard. Huh?
It needs to be an annual.
Oh yeah, no, not just that. I'm talking about annual is the definite, but the initial thing is no discrimination between men and women. If you can't make the PT test, you can't be a cop. If you can't make the academic achievement, you know, when you do the preliminary test, you can't be a cop. If you have this and this and this in your background, you can't be a cop. They pay you a lot of money and they train the heck out of you so you're a qualified cop. Every year you have to have, the police department has to provide training for cops to do shooting. Even if they do it on their own, they need to provide ammo. They need to provide a checklist where cops can go on a weekend or at least once a month and work on proficiency.
Right.
And they need to provide tactical, physical training, physical self-defense training for police officers. Every police officer needs to know some form of mixed martial arts. Every officer. That is required. They pay for it. They send you through the training, and we get that. And officers are held to a high standard, meaning that, and I'm going to tell you, there's a caveat to this. If you get a formal complaint, proven complaint of a use of force issue, you're fired. You're fired. Now, let's go with this.
All right.
All the things that I said will prevent or have a huge effect on how many bad interactions people have.
Yes.
However, you may not have enough police if you do that.
Correct.
Because if you put the bar here, physical fitness, how many people in the world are physically fit like that if you have never done any kind of training in your life? You may have a good heart, you may want to serve, but if you're not physically fit, you just isolated an entire population and you pretty much took out all the women that want to be police. And then you go through and you say, okay, I'm gonna teach you physical self-defense training and you have to shoot every month. Some people don't want to go through the training. Some people don't want to get beat up in MMA classes. They don't want that. So they're gonna drop off. If you have one complaint of a use of force that was proven, I'm not talking about use of force where it's negligent and criminal, but I'm talking about that you had excessive force on a person. They complained on you because you put not excessive force. I mean, like you tighten down the handcuffs too tight, or you swung a person on the ground, taking them down, and you were rough with them and you shouldn't have been.
Right.
Then you're going to lose a whole tier of officers. Then you're going to have a police department that don't have enough officers to respond to your calls for service. So we have to, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but we have to meet in the middle.
Absolutely.
I think we can bring up the standards. We can pay officers more. We can allocate more funds to get them well trained. And therefore, when you pay more, you can require more. You can require more life experience. You can require more educational experience. You can require more things. And then you'll get better quality officers. What people are going to experience now is policing is going to get worse. Why? Our department did it before. We went through a ebb and flow. They can't get officers right now because they bashed the profession. Nobody wants to be a cop. Any decision you make is scrutinized. They can't get officers. So what they have to do, they have to lower the standards. So the test to get into the thing is lower. The PT test is lower. Your background check, they make exceptions. right? You could smoke weed now within the last 2 years or last 6 months. You could have had 5 or 6 traffic stops that you were speeding on that they're going to overlook because they need people to be on the streets. So the public needs to meet us in the middle and say, let's get officers more training. Let's pay officers more. Let's give them more benefits. Let's get them more self-defense training. Let's get them more firearms training. Let's have them be held accountable and help them with their physical fitness training. Yes. And then, even then, my brother, you still are not going to eliminate the potential for bad people. This is true. They just need how many pastors are doing what they're supposed to do? Let me say this too, and I'm gonna shut up. Medical malpractice kills over 200. The numbers that I looked at, what they believe is around 400,000. Right. 426,000, I think, is the number. Yeah. Medical malpractice kill 400,000+ people every single year. Cops killed 1,200 people, and half of those people are pulling guns on cops and justified shooting. Right. They kill 400,000 people. Should the doctors have body-worn cameras? Facts. Do we need medical reform? Because they're killing. It'll take 100 years. No, it'll take 400 years. Is my math right? It'll take like 400 years for police officers at the rate in which they kill citizens to kill as many people as doctors do in 1 year. Facts. 400 years of policing. Yeah. So when you look at these things, you say, ladies and gentlemen, let's try to do what's best for officers. Let's try to make sure they have the proper mental health. Let's get them well trained. Let's get the money and the funding going so we don't have officers that are not prepared for these situations. And then let's also be realistic. Right. We're not going to eliminate bad officers. When you see a kid get murdered, maybe they mess you up for life. When you see a young man get murdered, or you see a man beheaded, or you see a person died in a traffic stop, maybe that's going to mess you up, because I've seen many people get killed by drunk drivers. I mean, literally beheaded. Yes. One guy was bent up like this, and he was in the trunk of the car. And another guy, it was a few other really bad ones. What did that make you feel when you stop a man that's drunk? You know what I'm saying? It make you feel it angers you a little bit. Yeah. Or you see the car where the car flipped over, drunk driver hit the car, flipped over, the kids are laying out on the street. And the drunk driver is out walking around. He's walking around. Yeah. He's walking around with a scratch on his forehead. Right. My friends were killed by a drunk driver. All of them. They were in a Grand Marquis, drunk driver going on the freeway, head-on collision with one of them old metal trucks, dude. Yeah. The truck barely had damage. That guy went to the hospital. He died a couple days later. Four of my friends were completely destroyed. Damn. The only thing left in that car was the trunk, and they were all smashed all over the freeway. So when you see things like that in policing, that may hurt people, and they may never recover from it. They may become more aggressive. They may become more jaded. So I don't mean to make excuses, man, but I'm like, I wish that people understood the nuances. Let's talk about things we can do better, but then let's also understand the reality of policing, and let's meet in the middle. And here's the thing. Let's hold people accountable. Right. If you shoot a man and you kill a man, I mean, like Walter Scott. I did a video on Walter Scott. The guy shot him in the back. The cop shot him in the back, and he deserved to go to prison for it. Yeah, he had the taser on the ground. He threw the taser, made it look like, But see, people don't listen. I went so far to say that cops that intentionally murder people should get the death penalty. That's what I say. Because premeditated or intentionally murdering somebody, like shooting a man in the back, there's no reason to shoot a man in the back, and he's running. He running like he got 3 left legs. The dude is hobbling like this. Yeah. I mean, you could throw a rock and hit him in the back of the head. You shoot that man in the back and you cover it up with a taser. Yeah. You got the uniform on. You should get the death penalty, in my opinion. Facts. But people don't listen to that part of Brandon Tatum. Like, I'm all for covering you. If you make a mistake, you should be held accountable. But, whatever according to the law. That's why. Now let me talk about qualified immunity. All right. People don't understand qualified immunity very well, because police officers aren't uniquely exposed to the exception of qualified immunity. So is public officials, so is governors and other people like that. Judges and stuff. Yeah. I think that I think that qualified immunity is 100% something that police officers should be able to accept. Because what people don't understand is that qualified immunity does not protect you if you kill somebody. If you kill somebody and you were found guilty, you don't get immunity. Qualified immunity is when you do something and you acted on behalf of the state in good faith. Meaning that if you're driving down the street, you go on code 3 to save somebody's life, and somebody jaywalked and you smashed and killed them, you should not be sent to prison or have to worry about the legal ramifications behind something that you did while you were acting in good faith. If you shoot a man in the back or you George Floyd somebody,
right,
there is no such thing as protection of qualified immunity for you. And people don't understand that. If you are innocent, or you are presumed innocent, or you do something in good faith acting on behalf of the state, you have protections in place. If officers have to defend themselves from every situation that occurs on duty, we have no officers, brother. There's no reason to be a police officer, because if the policy says you can kneel on somebody's neck, just hypothetically,
right,
and you adhere to the policy and kill somebody, you should be held accountable for that. If the policy says the use of force continuum goes where you use verbal reaction, you use verbal judo with somebody, I'm paraphrasing, and then you go to soft hand control, you go to taser doesn't work, you start escalating force, you use the force continuum 100% like the law says, and you kill a person who's unarmed, you should be able to be protected because you acted in good faith according to the law and according to use of force policy. You should not be held accountable and have to deal with your own court fees when situations like that arise. I hope I'm explaining it properly. I think people just don't understand that, like, qualified immunity don't apply when you are taking somebody's life unjustifiably.
Right. Well, the issue that I get with people with qualified immunity is they don't really understand the purpose of it is protect officers from civil liability. People are saying that if officers can be sued directly, it would help correct bad behavior. Now, we know people sue the deepest pockets, which is the department. My thing is, there's a caveat in qualified immunity that I believe creates an umbrella. Again, this issue is that it protects good officers in good faith, and it can also be used to protect bad officers. Because at the end of the day, you have a bad officer who can lean on, well, I was in fear for my life type of thing. We know we use that, which is a legitimate explanation. But it also can be used for an officer who actually is inadequately trained, an officer who necessarily might not have been fearful, but very reckless with his response to an incident or a situation. Or it could just be used for an officer to protect himself or herself if they're actually just lying and they aren't criminal in their actions, right? So I think
aren't criminal?
That are criminal.
Well, when you go to the criminal side of it, well, I was under the impression on our department, that people can sue you civilly.
Right.
They can.
Yes, they can.
If you violate somebody's constitutional rights, for especially you get fired,
right,
they can sue you civilly.
Yes.
Chauvin, the family not gonna sue Chauvin because he ain't got no money.
Right. They want the pension.
The
pension
court
is what people want.
Huh?
The pension is what people want to get.
Right. And so he's not gonna get a pension, obviously, because he got fired.
Right, he got fired.
And also he was ordered to pay restitution. Now, the man ain't got no money. Now let me explain this too. Think about this scenario, right? Because the department pays a family out, don't mean the officer was even guilty. So they shot Rashard Brooks. I'm sure they paid his family out. What's his name? That was in Kenosha. He got shot in the back 5 times. He's paralyzed.
Yeah.
Jacob Blake.
Yeah.
Jacob Blake had a knife. Jacob Blake presented himself as a deadly threat. He was in violation of a restraining order. They shot him. They were justified in using force against him. They paid his family like I don't know how many millions. Yeah. Now, think about this. What people want in a qualified immunity situation is that they want an officer to not have protection if the officer did what was right according to the law, yet the people can still come sue him.
Which is not right.
Because what happened with the department is that the cops were justified, but a wrongful death suit can be pursued, or an injurious pursuit can be pursued. The department settles with them.
Correct.
People think the department lost the lawsuit and they pay out. They don't. They settle with the family, and that's what. And then what people don't understand is that in settling with the family, the department is absolved of any wrongdoing, and the police officers. So if you shoot a man, like any of these situations we've seen, Michael Brown family got paid out $5 million. Something. The cop was justified in using force according to the Department of Justice.
Right.
And so it's not fair that if that officer was justified, that the family can sue him because they believe that in a wrongful death suit, they can sue him. And now the officer has the burden to defend himself against Benjamin Crump or some of these big high-powered lawyers, even though the cop was justified
and
according to the law.
Right. And I think that's the issue people conflate, is the fact the officer was justified in doing his job, though he did not have intentions of killing said person. The person died because of whatever internal issues or the officer applying the force. Though it was, and again, I don't remember all the details in the case with the guy who was choked out. But that is the issue. The issue is the officers authorized to use force. They used it. They did not have. They can't find evidence that would suggest that the officer intended to kill them. So therefore, it was a wrongful death. They didn't mean to kill him, but he died while the officer was acting under the color of law. Meaning he had a legitimate reason to stop him. He had a legitimate reason to detain him, cuff him, arrest him, or whatever. And the person died in police custody because of that. And so that is why a lot of departments still settle. People are saying that this thing that's going on, you hear a lot of activists say, get rid of qualified immunity. As my perspective, I look at it as a problem solver. I say officers should be licensed to perform this job, just like you have doctors have medical malpractice. They have medical malpractice insurance. I believe officers should be insured. And that way you put the onus back on officers and you can address the qualified immunity issue. Meaning, if I have $1 million insurance policy to perform this job, I have a license to perform this job. It'll also allow me to police in any state in this country. I'm insured. I have $1 million policy. If I violate someone's constitutional rights, if I'm wrong in my pursuits of doing this job, people have a right to sue me directly. I have insurance that saves the taxpayer money, because that's another issue too. Do you think that is a good idea? Officers get insurance.
No,
why not?
Only reason I say no is because they're acting on behalf of the state.
Okay.
Like if they were private, like if it was private security, 100%. You better have insurance. Like me as a speaker, I have to have insurance that cover me at events. So if I go to an event and they damage the person's property, they can sue me, or they can try to come after me. But I have insurance already because I'm a private entity acting on behalf of myself. So a private security company, yes. But when you are sworn to uphold the Constitution on behalf of the state, you work for the government. Like, you are not an independent actor. So
that's a good point.
That's the problem that people are missing, because they see officers and they look at them as isolated people. They're actually acting on behalf of the state. An officer cannot arrest you on something that he feel like is a crime. He has to only arrest you according to the laws that are on like in our state, the Arizona Revised Statute. His good faith behavior is good faith on behalf of the state, good faith on behalf of the laws. Now, we already have certification as a police officer in a particular state. And if you violate or you do something, you can lose your certification, which means you can never be a police officer again. That's a separate argument.
In that state, though.
Yeah, in that state. So, but the thing is, here's also the thing. If you go to another state, now, I have never seen this happen, but I'm not sure how they do this, right? If I got fired, man, you get fired from Macy's, you're going to have a hard time going and working at another department store, right? Because they're going to say, you got fired for embezzling money. Or, they didn't prosecute you, but you got fired for embezzling money.
A lot of officers quit before they're fired, though. Before that's like a thing.
And that I think can change, because the chief does that, right?
Right.
Because we had a situation like that on our department where they gave a guy an option.
Yes.
You retire, you
I know.
retire in lieu of termination.
Right.
Do you want to keep your pension or you want us to fire you? And so sometimes if a person has 30 years on the department and they do, like we had some guys do happy endings, right? They got some happy endings at the thing.
And got trust.
So they allow some of those guys to resign.
Right.
So if they resign, they still get to keep their pension or whatever. And they go.
Right.
So, but we would argue sometimes that the chief should then fire them immediately, because a chief can fire you immediately for, I would say dereliction of duty, or if you, cowardice, stuff like that. Chief can fire you automatically. But I think the public is they're listening to activists.
Yes, they are.
Activists see a principle, a law, or something that they find juicy, and they want to exploit you on that. These activists have no idea what they're talking about. Because if you want to get rid of qualified immunity for police, you have to get rid of qualified immunity across the board, which will be judges,
everybody,
and all kinds of people, man. And like, they just don't. They're not thinking about it. So my term is that let's leave qualified immunity alone, and let's hold officers accountable, and let's hold chiefs accountable, and to where if the person makes a legitimate mistake according to the policy, and you've acted in good faith to retain this officer by giving them remedial training, as long as it doesn't reach a certain threshold, you can give them training and they can become better. If they do stuff like excessive force, they're fired.
Right.
That's it. They say, I mean, when I say excessive force, I mean gross excessive force. Not you fighting a guy and you get the best of him and you slam him on the ground and then you twist his arm a little too hard in the heat of the moment and that person dislocates his arm. Excessive force. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that you just doing a guy like this and he's not even resisting, or the guy's in handcuffs and you kick him in the head, fired, and charged.
Correct.
That's a crime. You assault a person in handcuffs. That's a crime. It's called aggravated assault. That's a felony. That's what we were taught.
Right.
But one of the guys in our department, got spit on him and he reacted and hit him. The guy was in handcuffs. Now, the cop didn't lose his job. Can you see why? I mean, there's nuances to it.
Yeah, he was probably
disciplined. He got like 40 out. He got like what is it? 40. He got like 80 hours off no pay. Dude, that is devastating.
Yeah.
So he got disciplined, man, but he didn't lose his job. So, anyway, man, I know we could talk forever about people.
Man, we can, bro. Listen.
I just hope that it was conveyed well. I think that the qualified immunity is something that's like, it's like there's so many other, that's like gun laws, changing the age to 21. Dude, there's so many laws already on the books that we should be actually enforcing, instead of trying to create new laws. Instead of trying to take away qualified immunity, let's just hold these officers accountable. That's very simple. Let's just hold them accountable. They get fired, and civil liability. You acting on behalf of the state, then that's the state's fault. You as a person, it's very.
It's a good point.
That's the balance, dude. It's like you're not, because you can't. When I was a cop, I couldn't have my own personal beliefs, right? I can't talk to you about religion unless you start with me, and then we can have a conversation. But I can't talk to you about religion. I can't have my own personal beliefs. I can't just do whatever I want to do because I'm not acting on behalf of Brandon Tatum. I'm acting on behalf of the state. When you go and testify in court against a defendant, you are the state versus this person, not Officer Tatum versus this person. The state versus James Brown.
Right.
We're acting on behalf of the state. We're certified through the state. So we have protections and coverage through the state because they are the ones that formulate our use of force, formulate our policies, formulate our training. And so all of that liability is on the state, unless you go out and you commit a crime, and then therefore you are not protected by qualified immunity. And
that's true.
And I also want to add this too. It's also unions. People think, oh, the unions are doing it. You commit a crime, the union can't save you. You know what I'm saying? It's not like the union can say, hey, judge, he's a part of a union and aggravated assault is not covered in the union. It's like, no, bro, you're going to prison. The union.
The issue is the union. They have issues with the union and how they interact with politics, right? How they have their hands in pockets of some politicians, and how, and so that's the issue. And a lot of people don't know, every police department, every state does not have a union. We don't have a union down here. When you mess up, they let you go in Georgia, right? So we don't have that. So there's no, I forgot the term they use about the type of contract or something. But anyways, we don't have it here. But I do see the issue where people have with the unions. It does seem like they're a very strong force. They again are an umbrella that protect good and bad officers. They protect the officers from their department, from being mistreated and abused from their department.
And we need that.
And we do need it.
My union was necessary because we had the FOP, right? The big national, and then we had our own union, so people can sign up for which one they wanted to do. But we needed it because the union got us raises. The union made sure we were protected, made sure we drive safe cars. The union made sure they give us benefits, and they negotiate our contracts, like whether we get raises in the future, whether we get steps, whether we get medical coverage. The union fights on our behalf on so many ways. The union fights so they can't throw you under the bus. Meaning, if you didn't do anything wrong, the officer in DC, we donated like $75,000 to that officer's fund for him to be protected because they tried to fire him because the dude came up to him and said, "Are you going to shoot us like Ma'Khar Bryant?" And he said, "Are you going to stab somebody like Ma'Khar Bryant?" And they tried to fire him over that.
Right.
Because BLM called the police station. And then so we called the police station. And then obviously he kept his job. But the union will step in and say, "You're trying to fire him. What policy did he violate?"
There you go.
Because you guys are taking political pressure and the officer did not do nothing wrong according to the policy.
And yes, case in point, that would have been exactly the union would have protected the officer. I don't remember his name, who shot Rayshard Brooks. Yes. And when I explained to people he should have never been fired,
yes,
the politicians, right? The mayor forced his firing along with the DA. They trumped up these false all those officers involved and the ones who drug out the little kids out of the car and tased them. The DA at the time, Paul, I can't remember his name, but they ended up saying that the taser was a deadly weapon, right? And then I don't know if you remember that part, but he said it was a deadly weapon. Yeah. And then when the Rayshard Brooks situation said the taser is not a deadly weapon, he put himself in a trick bag. And so, but the politicians, right? The politicians and the politics caused almost 6 officers to lose their job. And then the city had to give them their job back. And now they're suing the city. Now the media doesn't cover that part. But if there was a union, the union would have stood up for those officers and said, you cannot fire those officers because they followed policy. And the officers did not have a union and they had to fight on their own. And people don't see that part. So
they don't. Yes, bro. Our union, our union, police association or whatever, I forget what they call it now. They were on the department's butt. They tried to fire one of my guys. Yeah. Because this is another thing. When you get in an officer-involved shooting, you don't immediately have counsel, right? You just shot a person. You don't have a lawyer. The union will come. The union rep will come and make sure that they don't violate your rights because you have garrity, which you have to give an initial statement, but you don't have to give them a statement outside of a lawyer, outside of your initial statement.
Correct.
But the police department feel the pressure and they may make you confess to something. So your union rep will come and protect you, get you water, make sure they don't violate your rights, make sure you are understanding what your rights are.
Right.
And people don't understand that aspect. And like, we needed the union, bro. Because the police department try to get you sometimes, man. They try to throw you under the bus. They try to fire you. They try to reprimand you. I'll give you one example and I'm shutting up. This one lady, she changed her name because it was worldwide. These women and this one dude, I'm friends with him. I hate to say it. He was a pimp, bro. I mean, not a legal pimp, but the dude had women. He had the women, right?
Yeah.
So he then got 2 women to kiss each other and record it in the locker room at the police station. He got women sending him naked pictures in the police uniform on his personal phone, right? This is personal stuff. One guy on the SWAT team decided to show it to all the SWAT operators. And a supervisor saw it and they said, oh my God, and everybody deleted it. But what they did was they saw this particular lieutenant. She was a lieutenant and she was very attractive lieutenant.
One in every department, boy.
So she was a lieutenant and what they did was they demoted her to sergeant.
Okay.
And her argument is that this man in a private text sent it to people and it's all deleted and then y'all don't have any evidence of it. This is rumors that y'all saw me here and there and there and you demoted me.
Wow.
And that's not right. The union defended her. She ended up having to change her name because it went all over the internet. But the union defended her Not only did they get her job back as a lieutenant, they got her job. She ended up becoming a captain, and they had to pay her back pay for all of that time she was supposed to be a lieutenant, and the compensation for her. She was supposed to be promoted to captain when all this happened. Same thing happened to a brother in Philly. I was a part of the National Black Police Officer Association when I first started. I forget the guy's name. He was a motor officer in Philly. It was a viral video. A drunk woman slapped him, and he tried the armbar, and she hit her face on the ground, and they demoted him from captain to lieutenant. His union stepped up. They had PR for him. They paid for his lawsuit. He ended up winning, getting his job back, and they had to pay him back pay for like 2 years, bro. They had him demoted for like 2 years while all this happened. They paid him a crap ton of money. And so that's the police officer's obligation. But I want people to understand this. If you commit a crime, the union can't help you. The Arizona revised statute or the Georgia penal code says this is a crime. And if you get indicted on that crime, your union can't change the law.
Correct.
The union is only there to make the department be held accountable.
Right.
And let me give you one more example. I'm gonna shut up. My friend who's on the SWAT team with me, this guy, and it's weird. It's a weird situation. People are gonna judge these people anyway. This guy, he. There's some officers at a Dunkin' Donuts, right? And they taking a call there, right? They're in the parking lot.
Ain't they eating, right?
They may be eating. I don't know. I cannot confirm it or not. They were eating. So this guy pulled up on a motorcycle. He pulls up. Rah, 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 rah. He's now engaging with these officers for no reason.
Right.
He sticks the middle finger up at the officers. He's antagonizing them. He take off down the street, and he take off at a high rate of speed. So now he's going 60, 70 miles. An officer pull out to go pull him over because now he's burning out and going at a high rate of speed. The officer's driving after him. The helicopter gets up. This guy's now going 120, 130 miles per hour down residential streets.
Right.
Going through lights at 100 and something. What they try to do is they try to get out in front of him in case he crashes, in case he stops, so they can then jump out and arrest him. This dude is going so fast that one of my guys was hearing him calling out on the radio. Now, people don't know that the radio has a delay. It's like a few second delay. I don't know if y'all have the analog radio where you click it and it goes dee-dee-dee, and then you can talk.
Correct.
So it's a slight delay. So the guys are calling out his location, but you know it's that slight delay, and then it's a delay from location to them calling out to the officers.
Right.
So the guy is hearing that he's back a distance. So he tries to go make a U-turn to go back down the street to try to intercept him down the street. This guy's going so fast that by the time they click dee-dee-dee and they call out a street, he's now halfway to the next street.
Right.
The officer goes to make the U-turn, hear this motorcycle come, and he come and hit the front of the car, and he's dead. Right? He's going 120. They had a citizen board, and I was on the board on behalf of the police officer. They had a citizen board to come out and say, yeah, that officer deserves to be fired and potentially charged because he intentionally tried to block the motorcyclist. Thank God we have a union. Thank God we had other officers with common sense because we had to explain to the lady it was impossible for him to know where the guy was at because the rate of speed he was going, how many feet per second, and how many seconds it took for a person to get on the rear and say, dee-dee-dee. It looked like he's passing Speedway.
Right. He already passed it.
Air unit confirmed it looked like he's passing Speedway. The guy's going so fast. And then my guy is, obviously explained that like nobody in their right mind will try to pull in front of a motorcycle at 120 miles per hour. For the officer, that's instant death if he T-bone you and that motorcycle go through the car.
Correct.
So
and putting the officer at risk too is another thing.
And the way the wheels were canted, they had to do all this to clear this officer. But go to say is that the union was able to represent him well and send me to the thing to review the case and to give perspective. Because the citizen board didn't know how the radio worked. They didn't know that he was traveling at like a block a second.
Right.
They didn't know that he was out traveling the sound of the motorcycle. Because the lady was like, he should be able to hear the motorcycle coming. And the guy said, when you're traveling at this rate of speed, he's out traveling the sound of the exhaust. So there's no way the officer could have even heard him coming.
Right.
And so, but that's the stuff. And that if that officer didn't have representation like that, he would have potentially been on trial. he would end up beating the trial, but he would have went through all of that when all he needed was union representation, somebody that represent the officer on his behalf before he gets to the grand jury and all that stuff.
Correct. And that's the piece that's missing. And a lot of this, and again, which is why I started my channel, to bring context to the conversation. Some people want to hear it. Some people appreciate. A lot of people don't want to hear it from me at all. Again, I'm also called a sellout and an Uncle Tom as well from some people. It's very unfortunate. It's very disheartening. At the end of the day, I'm just here to want to educate and provide mediation from a very difficult topic, man. A lot of people have no clue the nuance in this job. And at the same time, even with unions, you do have some officers who aren't that good at the job, who end up becoming also protected as well. And I think people just sometimes want to hear us say that. And I think that sometimes that's missing from the conversation. But Brandon, man, this has been a great conversation. I'm very grateful for you taking the opportunity to have this conversation with me. As you know, there's so much to talk about, and we definitely got to do it again. Definitely got to talk about more reform ideas. Like, you really opened my mind up in reference to that idea in regards to providing insurance for officers. You made a very, very strong, valid point, which is the reason why I want to bring a lot of these ideas, some that I received from some of my followers as well, as to like, hey, here's the things that we have issues with. Let's bring context to it. I think it'd be a great discussion and just have a show just on police reform and throw a bunch of ideas, like debate a couple of ideas, and really bring some insight to a very complex issue that a lot of people aren't afforded the opportunity to know and understand because they did not do the job. We're two officers who move with integrity. We policed through ourselves, but also through our views on faith, our views on love for people, and wanting to serve the people and the citizens, and especially the Black community. I think that's a big thing as well. Let me ask you this in closing, though, Brandon. What's next for you, right? Brandon Tatum, the man, the myth, the legend. You know, I think you have almost like 2 million subscribers. You know, shout out to you. Congratulations, man. I'm new to this space. And, man, when I get a new subscriber, I do a cartwheel, man. I can't even fathom. You know, you got it out the mud, man. You put in the work. You put the grind in. And not only that, you are a dynamic voice on YouTube, and you're also a dynamic voice outside of YouTube. And so people see you. I think after seeing this interview, they're going to have a better, hopefully a renewed understanding. And renewed understanding. And listen, it's okay for us to disagree on certain things, two sides of the same coin. One can argue that at the end of the day, we know that the situation needs to get better. And though we might share different perspectives and nuances here and there, reality is we want to see a difference. We want to see a change so that citizens have a better outcome with law enforcement, and also the Black community have a better love and appreciation to law enforcement, and law enforcement have a better understanding on how the Black community wants to be served and treated. What's next for Brandon Tatum? Politics, what's going on?
I'm just letting God lead me, man. That's all I can do. You know, I just got the syndicated radio show. I took over for Larry Elder on Salem News. Appreciate it. And so that was the next step that I've taken. You know, so many things I want to do. You know, Candace Owens and I have BLEXIT, which is our nonprofit organization, and so we just trying to expand that. We're in 41 states. We just want to make it better. We want to get connected into the Black churches and Black communities in a more effective and efficient way. We already are everywhere, but we want to be more effective. You know, we think we can continue to do better in that area. I just want to keep speaking and having a voice on YouTube. Hopefully I get 2 million. I'm going to have a big celebration. I want to write more books. I want to create, you know, my mind is I want to do a documentary on policing. I think police officers don't have a voice.
Nope.
I would love for you to be a part of it when I do it, but police officers don't have a voice. I want the world to hear multifaceted perspectives from police officers, because I'm not the one voice. You know, me and you may disagree on some things. It's fine, man. We both are acting in good faith. We may see things differently. They don't make you right, I'm wrong. They don't make you bad, I'm good, or whatever the case may be. It's like, but the world needs to hear from all of us, because there are some officers that may totally disagree with me. But I think that people need to hear that perspective. So eventually I want to do that. I'm obviously an entrepreneur. You know, I've been developing an energy drink that hopefully we can get the nuance and come out with it here soon, maybe by the end of the year. But I mean, all kind of stuff, man. I do it all, man. I'm not just a YouTuber.
Right.
I have a whole staff of people that I pay, that I have, that have benefits. I have a team of people that I do things with. I have an online news network. I'm just trying to do and maximize everything God put in me to the best of my ability till I'm gone.
Amen to
And
that.
so what's next for me is only God can tell. Just know I'm acting in good faith, and I'm trying to lift up the name of Jesus, and I'm trying to be as truthful and honest and transparent and authentic as I can. And then we'll see how that all crumble at the end of the day.
Hey, I heard that, man. Listen, shout out the book too, because I know you have a book. I just found out
Okay.
recently. If you got a
I'm gonna have it
copy,
over
show
here.
us. And then if you could send me some links to your to the radio, and then also to the book where people can find your book. Give us a little, yeah.
And so I would love to send you one of these books too.
Hey,
Just
man.
give me I think we'll get your address. I'll send you one. But
Okay.
Being Black and Blue was a book I wrote. I think it was a year and a half ago. It's confusing because during COVID, I wrote the book already, but then we couldn't publish it till later. But I wrote the book maybe a year and a half ago, and it's about being a Black police officer in America.
Sweet.
And in the book, I interview Black and white police officers to tell the story of the things that we go through in policing and the things that I believe could change. I brought up some in the book. We talk about situations that are justified shootings, situations that are unjustified shootings, understanding the difference. We talk about George Floyd and this whole thing, and also Chauvin. I give a breakdown of what I think about that case. We talk about police reform. We talk about what does defunding the police, how does that affect police officers? And one thing that I think people will find very interesting, two things that we give solutions at the end of the book. Okay. Myself and 5 other officers give solutions to the problems at the end. And then at the beginning, you get a little taste of like who I am, where I come from, why I became a police officer. Some funny stories about when I got arrested at 8 years old for smoking marijuana in a vacant house. So I think people will enjoy the book, man. I'll send you a copy. We'll get you a copy. And if people are interested in buying it, just theofficertatum.com. You can find merch, you can find books, you can find podcasts, everything at theofficertatum.com.
Man. Listen, and then please, send me those links. I want to add them to the description and let people know as well. Listen, Brandon, I'm so grateful again. Truly a blessing to have you. I'm looking forward to working with you more on a lot of different things. And if you ever need my input or my insight or a difference in opinion, if you ever want to debate on some issues, I'm always down, brother. I'm always down. Thank you, and God bless you, man, and your family as well, and the work that you're doing. Again, thank you so much for that. And listen, man, with that being said, you guys, listen, let the truth find you where the lies have left you. I say that all the time because a lot of truth always needed to bring into a conversation where lies are present. So Brandon, thank you again, brother. I can't say it enough, man. Thank you so much. All right.
God bless you, brother. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining us on this amazing, amazing interview. Listen, you guys, I'm so appreciative that you are here with us in the member section and you had an opportunity to watch the stream. I'm really curious to know what you thought. I'm really excited as well to get your feedback. And listen, I want to give a special shout out to Brandon Tatum, you guys. Listen, I reached out to him. We had a great conversation. He was excited about doing the interview, and it really meant a lot to me. I really appreciate him taking the time to have the conversation, you guys. We covered a lot, and there was a lot of things we weren't able to cover, so I'm looking forward to reconnecting with him again and having more conversations relating to law enforcement and the issues along with the solutions, you guys. So I hope that you found this informative. Hope that you enjoyed yourself as well. And listen, I will put Brandon Tatum's information around here as well as in the video description, you guys. Please go and check him out. Please go and support the work that he's doing. He's doing a lot of great things in and out of YouTube, entrepreneur and within politics, you guys. Listen, he also has a book. He's an author, and I heard the book is doing extremely well. Beating Black and Blue, you guys. He was able to send me a copy. So Brandon Tatum, thank you so much. I sent the care package to you, brother. I hope that you received it well. And I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Shout out to those who subscribe to the channel, those who are new to the channel. I really appreciate all that you do and just supporting me in this journey as a translator, as a mediator between two powerful forces, the police and the people. You guys, at the end of the day, we need each other, and one cannot exist without the other. And so moving forward, I'm looking forward to having more tough discussions, interviewing more phenomenal people on the channel, and I'm looking forward to your continued support and feedback. If you see value in this channel, please subscribe, please share, like these videos, you guys. And again, thank you so much for your support. And with that being said, listen, let these truths find you where the lies have left you. Good night and God bless.